By jailing Tommy Robinson for 13 months, the establishment has whipped up a firestorm and made him a martyr around the world. He's like the new Edward Snowden or Julian Assange. He is now the icon of the quote-unquote far right, because he's not far right. And people have been labelled far right, mislabelled, so they can be shut down, because they've been classified as neo-Nazi or whatever, so that justifies, you know, Google and the big monopolies, giants' ability to shut them down, and that's what they do. They label you as a pretext to silencing you. And that's what they did with Tommy Robinson. He was a bellwether for how the rest of society goes. That's why it's so important that we don't just allow what's happened to him, and we reverse the decision, because there is still ambiguity about the court case, about whether it's contempt of court, about whether it's proportional punishment, and about whether it's about his attempt to be silenced by the state, because he knew that he was going to be silenced one day. He knew they wanted to put him away. There was no one there to cover that rape trial, no media, and it was a massive public interest story. So it was his duty to cover it, and in him doing that, he's breaching the peace. And then they give him 13 months for contempt of court, except there's ambiguity because in the courtroom the judge didn't say it was because of contempt of court. And also then the judge was pictured 10 minutes before the trial with the police in the window, so there was collusion, influence, manipulation, corruption. And because of that, it's whipped up a firestorm around the world, and now people are protesting as far and wide as Germany, Australia, Canada, America, name the country. He is the martyr. See, it didn't matter so much when they went after people like Jayden Franson, because people knew that she was associated with the far right in many ways, and was a kind of white supremacist. But Tommy Robinson, he's not a white supremacist at all. He's like a white supremacist like Milo. You know, he's completely liberal in many ways, and they've jumped the shark. They really have jumped the shark. They're not going to be able to contain this. They tried to contain it with that ridiculous gagging order, but then the rest of the world was reporting on it. Geert Wilders was talking about it in Netherlands, and he's going to visit over here, and people are saying that he's not going to be able to get in. That is an absurd situation for your country to be in, that the far right are being labelled as bad as ISIS, when it's the moderate Islamists that even believe in stoning women to death and, you know, stoning your wife, which is in the Quran, and they believe Sharia is perfect, and they go on the radio every day talking to Majid Nawaz, apart from today, obviously. But you know, it's very disproportionate. But the focus is always disproportionately on the quote-unquote far right. And if everyone's been labelled far right, then the focus is on everyday people trying to resist the technocracy, trying to wake people up that the media is propaganda. Everyone that actually is switched on, that knows what's going on, that's lit, that's woke. Anyone that understands the global resistance, the New World Order, humanity versus the elite, anyone that understands the paradigm is fair game to be silenced and attacked. And the elite are meeting in Bilderberg this weekend. So, like, in the next 2 days, they're going to be meeting the global elite. That means all the heads of the big social media companies will all be colluding to say we need to do more to stop right-wing extremism. That means they're going to silence everyone's voices. And the majority of people are classed as right-wing extremists because they are awoke to the problems of radical Islam in our country, or literalist Islam in our country. But, you know, let's not quibble. It is related to Islam. And our policies have endangered us. And now look at Italy. They've just elected their president or prime minister, and he's actually anti-EU, and he's going on a war against Soros. Who is the enemy? Who is the one that's colluding? He's the one trying to stop Brexit. He's the one trying to stop Trump. He's the one that's done it in country after country. He was responsible for Ukraine, the Maidan. He's now known to be the one for the NGOs against going into Italy and causing terrorism in Europe. Arrest him! Arrest George Soros! Because it's treason what the NGOs were doing. And when is enough crime enough for this billionaire hedge fund manager, Nazi collaborator? As he admitted in his own interview, he doesn't do many interviews. Why is he so public and so influential around the world if he doesn't do that much press? He's kind of known about by the news and the people that talk about him and everything, but he doesn't actually do any popular interviews or anything. He doesn't need to. He's rich enough. And his goal is his ideological agenda, which is nothing to do with what he talks about. He says he does what he does to make money. He doesn't consider the social aspects or ramifications of what he does. And yet, he wants to stop Brexit because Brexit was bad for Britain. So if you're just doing it to make money, why do you say things like that? And why doesn't anyone question him on this? Why hasn't anyone actually interviewed George Soros and questioned him properly? Some proper, genuine journalist. I'd say he's enough of a public figure. I'd say he's fair game for questioning, since he's got all the leftist shills on his side, like Owen Jones, etc. You know, and people that are so-called defending Jewish people or the Jewish state, you know, they defend George Soros, even though he wants to end Israel. That's what George Soros' goal is, to end Israel. So he can't use the anti-Semitism argument when you criticise Soros. But he plays it anyway, and they play it now with Bilderberg. Oh, that's a Jewish conspiracy, that's anti-Semitism. Oh, God, how are you supposed to how are you supposed to address the problems if you can't target them? You can't identify them. You can't do it with Islam because that's Islamophobia, that's hate speech, that's horrible, blah, blah, blah. If you quote the Quran, that's hate speech. If you name a statistic, that's hate speech, and you get shut down because of these colluding media giants in meetings like Bilderberg. How are we supposed to solve the problems of the world if we can't even identify the problems of the world? Are we going to keep lying and saying that the big problem is the rise of the far right? We're fomenting that rise, if anything. We're making people more racist. It's horrific what's happening. But it's the left that's doing it. It's the race baiting, it's the agitating all the time that's causing that reaction against it. Why can't they see that?